Hi everybody, I don't know if you remember me. My name's Nina. So content today was a lot easier, I might add, than I thought it was going to be. There we go. That's what I was trying to say. Sorry, it's like 8:30 in the morning for me. I'm not a morning person. I've been up for 3 hours. I don't know why. And I don't know why. So we're just kind of gonna wing this video. So this video, I wanted to kind of go into detail about how I met Miles, who Miles was to me, and then I think I'm going to record another video some other time kind of discussing who John was and who John was to me. So, let's get into this thing. So, now, I had to dig a little bit. I didn't dig too far. Most of the stuff between Miles and I are deleted. And later on, you can kind of figure out why. So I have all this written down, I might add, okay? I have like a little notepad of when the first time he came into the chat room. Well, about the first time he came to the chat room and everything. So I am what I call a low-key model. I don't try to make content. I don't try to push content with other models too much. I don't try to be like the next porn star or the next big thing. Matter of fact, my chat room is actually really chill. Like, I don't ask for tips. I don't make people tip. They tip on their own behalf. So I never pressured my guys to tip. Miles, John, and anybody else in my room, they tip when they want to. If new content is out or just because. Miles always tipped just because to help somebody out. So we're going to get into Miles. I can't see when the account was created because he closed the Miles account. The account was called Mile High Man. And some of my regulars, he's been in my room for years. So a lot of my regulars actually know the name. And Miles' first tip was January in 2013. Now keep in mind that was like almost, Jesus Christ, we're going into 2019. So it has been a long time. I want to say, I'm not 100% sure, that he tipped in the very beginning of coming into my room. When I met Miles, we instantly clicked. We were able to talk like we were the best of friends. There was nothing that Miles did not know about me. Miles came to me from another model's room. I'm going to keep that model's room private. Actually, I think she's still somewhat Cam's. I didn't go lurking into her chat room looking for him. He came to me, and then I asked him, why he comes on MFC, because everybody's on MFC for something. They're either missing something out of their relationship, communication, or just it's a strictly sexual thing. Whatever. Everybody's on there for something. So I asked, Miles, like, why are you on here? And he explained to me that his ex-wife, hates him, that she wants nothing to do with him. His daughter wants nothing to do with him. He had a lot of health issues. I'm assuming the sea level in Colorado, which is where he's from, by the way, not whatever they said it was. I don't even know why they didn't clear the locations. Doesn't matter. They didn't. So the sea level for Miles, like, really had him sick. I don't know if he was actually really sick. I don't know if the oxygen tank that I saw was real. I don't really know. And I'll get into why I don't really know in a little bit. Now, Miles was sick. As far as I know, I didn't know how sick. I mean, Miles didn't have anyone in his life. He had no friends. I knew he didn't have any family that wanted to talk to him. His ex-wife didn't want nothing to do with him. His daughter was old enough. I think she was in her teens. Don't quote me on that. But she wanted nothing to do with him. And I'm just like, oh my God, this poor pitiful guy just needs a friend. And I have a really bad habit of getting to know people maybe a little bit more than I should. Like, I love to talk to people. I love to know what their story is. So that's kind of where it progressed. Like, I started to get to know Miles. Of course, you know, he told me he works in construction. With his health issues recently, he had to move to an office. So I was like, okay, cool. It's still better than nothing. And we got to talking, and we're like really vibing. We're talking every day, every night, every time I logged in, he logged in. And at that time, I had about 4 solid regulars. They didn't tip every time. I don't make my guys tip every time. They tip when they want to. But most of them just tip like a couple times of the month, depending on the amount or depending on what time of the month. Like my birthday, Christmas, whatever. Unfortunately, I can't go back to like conversations. I've had new phones, clearly, since 2013. And the website has done a lot of updating. And chat conversations would take me years to find. Because, well, I can like 5, 6 times a week. Sometimes 7. So, and that was so long ago. Which is irrelevant. Doesn't matter. So, Miles and I instantly clicked. We talked all the time. I knew everything about him, or so I would like to think. You know, he always told me that his ex-wife was very black and white in the bedroom. She never got her nails done in any color. It was always like a nude or a pink, and he always liked the racy colors. Like, he loved the matte black, the shiny black, the stiletto heels. Like, it was always his thing, which came off shocking because looking at him, I would never be like, oh yeah, he loves this kind of like whips and scratching and spanking. I know I'm going way into detail about this. Okay. So he kept telling me, you know, how miserable he was during his marriage. And once it ended, it kind of like destroyed him. You know, my heart melts for this guy. All I'm seeing is this unhealthy guy, and this woman just took advantage of him and left him and took everything. He was living in this crap apartment. And my heart broke for him. We talked all day, every day. Like, and you play it back in your head now and you're like, what did we talk about every single day? But there were things that we talked about. Like, we could make a conversation out of anything. It was ridiculous. I loved Miles. He was my best friend. And when I was actually filming with Neve and Max, they actually asked me, they're like, your best friend is one of your members? And I'm like, yes. We live in a world where common sense isn't that common anymore nowadays. It's just not. You know, you have girls trying to sleep with their husbands. You have girls trying to be manipulative and sneaky and conniving and just very catty and jealous and hateful. I don't want that shit in my life. I don't like drama. I don't like problems in my life. So I don't socialize. I just don't. Another thing is a lot of people just think my job is very malicious and I'm out to sleep with husbands. Not the case. So, Miles was my best friend. There was nothing Miles could tell me that I didn't know. But at the same time, he was still telling me stuff that I didn't know. It sounds so weird, but I knew everything about Miles. I knew everything about Miles. And somehow every day we still had something to talk about that I didn't know. Like his thoughts on a certain subject. And then it's just like that moment happens. I'm like, okay, now I have to know. Like I know everything about him now. I have to have. And then the next day comes and I learned something new about his opinion on something else. And it was just like, it was never a dull moment with Miles. I never spoke to Miles on the phone. We text all the time. He was on all my social media. / that. He was not on all my social media. He was only on MFC and he was only on Snapchat. There was times he even removed his Snapchat because he just couldn't handle it. And I actually made a Facebook account for Miles. He claimed he didn't have any social media. He was very, like I said, he didn't have any friends. It broke my heart. He knew that Mike and I were co-parenting. And at the time, yes, in 2013, all the way up until, like it was posted a couple years ago, Mike and I were not married. So Miles knew that I was living with Mike, that we would go on like trips together. Like I'm not saying vacation trips, but he knew like we would go back to Tennessee to visit family. Like he knew it all. He knew day-to-day events, everything. And I would always talk to him how I felt about things and how I was stressed and how work was slow or work was great. And I wasn't really sure why work was all of a sudden working so well for me. It was just day-to-day stuff. So there were several incidents where Miles would disappear. At that time, he was still living in Colorado. So his health was really, really bad. There were days that he would just disappear. And being the fact that I loved Miles, I was so concerned as a friend. I was so worried about Miles. There was actually multiple, I'm not sure if it's more than 2, but I know 2 for sure, that I've actually called the police in his area in Aurora and was just like, hey, I have a friend that lives at this address. He hasn't responded to me in over 12 hours, which is very unlikely. And they'll ask, like, how do you know him? I know him through social media. Have you ever met him? No. But this is his name. This is his address. This is his phone number. We were just talking, and then all of a sudden the conversation died in the middle of the night. I just assumed he fell asleep, but here it is, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I haven't heard anything. Can someone just do a general check on him? And of course they do. I don't hear anything back. until shortly after I would assume like the police arrive. And he texts me, he goes, hey, I'm fine. I took some medicine and I didn't feel good. I passed out on the floor. I have a big knot on my head. I think there was a couple suicide attempts. Don't quote me on that one. There were times that I was really emotional. And I'm just like, I don't know what to do. All I can do is be a friend, but I'm not going to get in my car and I'm not going to go find this man. That would be stupid. I was generally worried about him. We wouldn't go 4 or 5 hours without talking. That just was unreal to us. So, I was constantly worried about him. Then I'm trying to play the timeline in my head. Now it can be a little wishy-washy because I don't have any text messages or any more emails or any PM histories to go on. If that was the case, I would literally be sitting here for hours. So there was times, like I said, Miles would disappear. And then I would generally get concerned. I would call his phone just to see if he would pick up. No answer. He had a really bad depression problem, and I understood why. He went from this married husband, father figure, working a construction job, feeling like he's on top of the world, and then he goes and he's sitting at a desk, and his wife left him. His daughter wants nothing to do with him. He claims he's broke. There was just so much. And I completely understood where he came from, and my heart broke for him because that would devastate me. And he would tell me times he had to pay his wife, or his ex-wife, he had to pay his ex-wife to come pick him up from the hospital. He would spend weeks on end at the hospital, supposedly. He was in mental homes, I believe, twice. Again, don't quote me. I don't really have references to go on. This is just strictly memory from 5 years ago. So I'm generally worried about his health. He decides that he is just going to up and sell everything and he's going to move. Okay. I'm down for it. What's the game plan? I'm going to totally support you on whatever you want to do. And he's like, well, I'm going to sell all my antique cars. At that time, his health had really, really declined. He wanted me to have everything that he had. So he supposedly put it on a will. I don't think he did. But supposedly he had put it in a will. He had put his most valuable stuff in storage. That way, if anything does happen, nothing would end up missing, blah, blah, blah. At that point, being from afar and not actually physically seeing his day-to-day and his general health, I assumed he was on his last leg. And what I wanted to do as a friend, and as I was there the entire process, I wanted to make sure that I was going to be there through the whole process. And by that, I mean, I wanted to be his best friend up until the very last second. He meant so much to me. He was there through so much emotional trauma. He knew everything that had ever happened in my life. So I was like, look, I really don't want to be on your will. I don't feel like it's my place. And, of course, a lot of you guys are going to be like, I don't believe that. I really honestly told him I was not comfortable having his money. I was not comfortable having anything. What I did ask from him was, he always talked about his watches. And I was like, which one was your favorite watch? And he said, I want to say it was a Rolex, but that's not the point. He was like, it's this specific watch. And I'm like, that is the only thing I want. And he's like, why is that? I said, because that is what is the most important materialistic thing to you. And if you go, that is a piece of you that I would like to keep with me, because you were such an amazing friend and you have helped through all these years to help support me. He's like, but I want to give you the money for all the antique cars I sell. I was like, that's not important. That's not important to me. If you choose to do it on your own. I feel like your daughter would benefit from it more. But he was like, she doesn't want anything to do with me. I was like, that's not the point. Then you can leave this world saying, I tried everything in my power to have her in my life, and she really didn't want anything else to do with me. And you can say that you helped her. We never really went to full detail about what everything really was, because I knew he lived in an apartment. I knew he didn't have a lot of money. He used to live in supposedly this big house with the pool, and I don't know how much of that is true. He did give me some really good advice when I had problems with my pool. So Miles claims that he sold all the cars in an auction, but one in his active car. And it was supposedly a Mustang, and he planned on suiting it all up and giving it to me. Whatever. I'm not a Ford girl. Sorry. But it was one of those things, just like the watch. If that's what you wanted me to have, and that was one of your important things in your life that you wanted me to have to remember you by, then so be it. But I'm not going to ask for it. And nothing ever came of it. Never spoke of the car again. Don't really know if it really existed. Never showed me proof. He knew a lot about cars. God, he knew a lot about cars. When he played his best role ever as Tron, we would actually watch Velocity. And we would talk about the cars. And he would tell me the engines and all the gears and gadgets and stick shifts and whatever else was in there. And it wasn't just one or two cars. It was almost every one we watched. Or a movie. And he remembered the car specifically. I mean, he had everything down. So he said he was going to suit up this car. And he was just going to give it to me. He really wanted me on this will. And it wasn't just the will. It was everything. He wanted to be cremated and just dumped somewhere. I was like, I'm not just going to dump your ashes somewhere. Tell me where you want your ashes to go, and I will address it. Because I felt like there was nobody there in his life that was going to address it. So what is this man just going to do? Just die and nobody gives a shit? No. As a friend, I felt like I had to do something. So, we kind of talked details, like, where do you want your ashes to go? I didn't know the process of a will. I didn't know if he wrote it up with his lawyer and then would give it to me, or I would have to go find a lawyer and we would have to write something up. I didn't know how the process goes because I've never been in that predicament where I had to do it. So I was like, okay, cool. What's the game plan? He goes, I've already had everything written up. When the time comes, my lawyer will address it. Okay. I didn't, my heart was heavy because nobody actually really wants to talk about that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I was devastated. This is someone that's been in your life for years. He's been a very important factor. He's your best friend. You talk to him about everything. It was odd because I talked to Miles about John. And at the time it was just I felt like he understood. But I look back at it and I'm like, I'm so stupid because I talked to Miles about John and he's the same. He's the same person. So supposedly the will's written up, so we kind of just leave it. Whatever happens, happens. He starts selling all his stuff. I actually met him, and I don't recall when this was. This was definitely before I was married. My husband knew I was meeting him. We met at Starbucks. We hung out and talked for a couple hours. Like, we were just the best of friends. We actually went... The first day, he was coming for a weekend. The first day, I picked him up at the hotel. And we went to one of my favorite restaurants. It was local. We had a great time. We talked. I tried to help him figure out his phone. There was something on Snapchat that, like, when he clicked a certain thing, it would just go blank and would stop working. So I tried to help him figure that out. And I tried to, like, sync his contacts and try to figure all that out. And then I realized I was the only person in that man's phone. The only person. That was it. There was no mom, there was no dad, there was no girlfriend, there was no ex-wife, there was no daughter. Like, he had nobody's phone number. It was just mine. And I got that weird, eerie feeling like it was a throwaway phone. Like, I know it was from T-Mobile, but I just had that weird gut feeling that this just wasn't... There is no way that this man could be this lonely. There's no way. Like, are there really people on the face of this planet that really have no friends? Yeah. But we couldn't figure it out. It doesn't matter. I gave him his phone back. We chit-chatted some more. I'm trying to remember. It was so long ago, and so much has happened since. I believe I dropped him off right after that. I know it was in the evening time that I met him. And, you know, my kids come home, stuff like that. So I believe I dropped him off. And, of course, we text almost right away. You're just as pretty online as you are in person. Switch those. And then the next day we meet at Starbucks. At the time I was breeding Siamese kittens. And we meet at Starbucks. He's like, I want one of your kittens. It's a part of you that will be with me. And I was like, okay. He was like, how much do I owe you? I was like, you don't owe me anything. Take the kitten. And I gave him a list of everything he was going to need. Cat litter, cat food, bowls, toys, whatever. And we went and had coffee. And he wrote me this check. It was only like $200. It was $200. I don't want to say only. Nowadays, $200 doesn't get very far. But it was $200 and it was written to the next month. And I was like, no, I don't want this. He was like, what's the difference between me giving you a post-dated check versus me tipping you online? I was like, are you sure? Because I didn't meet you to get money. That's not my intention. He's like, yes, I'm sure. At that time, I wasn't using any other payment method other than MFC. And MFC got half. So I guess he felt like that was what he wanted to do. I was like, okay, cool. So that was the only and last time we really hung out that weekend. And I gave him a hug goodbye. And I believe he went back up to Colorado to finish some situations up there. He would send me pictures of this little kitty and how much joy he brought to him. Don't remember if it was a girl or boy. I want to say it was a girl. There's no telling. And how this cat really makes him smile, and what this cat does that just like he gets a kick out of. And it really made me happy because it made me feel like I gave him something that took his mind off of things. It wasn't long after that there was started to become a lot of health issues that were a lot worse than it was before. Supposedly, he has been passed out with the front door open, and the neighbors have checked on him. And they were generally concerned about him, so they would check on him. I believe it was a grandmother and granddaughter that lived together that were generally worried about him.